The fog over Aldergrove Ridge didn't part so much as lean aside, and 11 feet of muscle and matted gray fur stepped out of it sideways. I didn't reach for the rifle slung across my back. I never did any more. "Morning, Scarn," I said, the way you'd greet a man crossing the same trail you'd both crossed for 3 years. Scarn dropped his head until his breath fogged the grass between us, then folded down onto his haunches like a building deciding to lower itself. 7 months ago that same head had taken the arm off a man who'd come up here with a tranquilizer rifle and a forged collection permit. I'd found the arm. I never found the man. The Frontier Wildlife Compact called him a ridge strider, apex of the Aldergrove canopy, Class 1 protected, the last confirmed breeding line on 3 settled worlds. The colonists down in Cairns Hollow called him the Mountain Devil and kept their children's curfew tight on fog nights. I called him by the only name anyone had ever given him without first trying to kill him. I was halfway through my morning count, paw prints, scat, the long claw gouges he left stretching in the bark, when my comm buzzed against my hip. Not the Compact's channel. A private frequency, the kind that pinged you when somebody wanted to talk before the paperwork caught up. "Ranger Quinn." The voice was smooth the way oiled hinges are smooth. "Garrick Voss, Voss Exotic Acquisitions. I believe you're sitting on a depredation order for a specimen matching your companion there." I looked at the unit, then at Scarn, whose ears had swiveled toward the sound the way they did for engines 2 ridges off. "There's no depredation order on this range. Nobody's filed a complaint." "Filed 3 days ago. Stock losses at the Hollow. Regional office signed off this morning." A pause, performative like he was checking his nails. 6 men, 1 transport, landing at the lower switchback in 40 minutes. We'd appreciate you standing clear. He cut the channel before I could answer. Scarn was already on his feet, a low sound starting in his chest that I'd only ever heard him make once before, the night I pulled a poacher's wire snare out of his foreleg with my bare hands, and he'd held still for it, trembling, trusting a stranger not to make it worse. A glint moved against the cloud line above the ridge, small, fast, deliberate. A scout drone, the expensive kind, the kind a man like Voss sent ahead to confirm a kill before he committed the transport fuel. It dropped low over the clearing, lens swiveling toward the gray shape beside me, and Scarn's head came up off the ground in one motion, ears flat, lips peeling back from teeth the length of my forearm. He didn't lunge. He didn't need to. The drone hung motionless for 2 full seconds, as if its operator 2 ridges away had felt something crawl up his spine through the camera feed, and then it climbed straight up, and away so fast it clipped a branch on the way out. "That's one," I said, mostly to myself. That trust hadn't come easy. 3 years back I'd been the new ranger nobody briefed properly, hiking blind into territory that was supposed to be empty. Scarn had circled me for 2 days without showing himself, testing whether I'd run, whether I'd shoot, whether I'd do any of the things the others had done. I hadn't run. I'd sat down on a fallen log and eaten my ration bar and let the silence do the talking. On the 3rd morning he'd simply been there when I woke, lying across the mouth of my tent like he'd always slept there, and he never asked permission again. I called the regional office while I climbed toward the switchback, Scarn packing the tree line beside me, silent now, matching my stride without trying to. "Stock losses 3 days ago," I said when the duty clerk picked up. "Pull the file." A long pause. "Keys. Filed by a private contractor, witnessed and co-signed by a Hollow rancher named Petrick Sullen. Says a ridge strider took 4 head of cattle off his eastern pasture." Sullen's eastern pasture backs onto the river gorge. There's no ridge strider access from that side. It's a 100-meter drop. I surveyed it myself in spring. Another pause, this one less comfortable. "I'll flag it for review." "Review takes a week. Voss is landing in 20 minutes. The clerk didn't have an answer for that, and I didn't wait for one. The transport set down hard on the switchback, kicking gravel into the ferns, and 6 men came off the ramp the way men come off a ramp when they've done this before, spread wide, weapons low but ready, moving like they already owned the ground. Voss came last, unhurried, a tablet under one arm and a smile he probably practiced. "Ranger Quinn, I was hoping you'd be reasonable." "I am being reasonable. Show me the depredation order." He held the tablet up at a distance that made the print impossible to read, which told me everything before I'd asked the second question. "Authenticated this morning. Regional seal's right there." Regional seal authenticates a complaint. It doesn't authenticate a kill order without a 48-hour posting window, which this doesn't have, because it's 20 minutes old. I kept my voice flat, the same voice I used on spooked tourists and cornered animals alike. "And Sullen's eastern pasture has no Strider access. I have the survey on my recorder if you'd like to compare it to whatever coordinates you filed." Voss's smile thinned by exactly 1 degree. Behind him, one of his men had drifted sideways along the tree line, rifle coming up, eyes on the gray shape standing motionless at my shoulder. "Don't," I said, not loud, not to Voss. The man fired anyway. Scarn moved the way weather moves, no warning, no wasted motion, just suddenly there a wall of fur and muscle between the muzzle flash and me, and then the rifle was in the ferns 20 feet away, and the man was on his back with 11 feet of ridge Strider standing over him, jaws an inch from his throat, not closing. Not yet. Waiting on me. "Easy," I said. Scarn's jaws stayed open. The man under him had stopped breathing in any way that made noise. I looked at Voss, who had gone very still, his practiced smile nowhere in sight. Forged paperwork is a compact violation. Discharging a weapon inside a protected exclusion range during an active ranger challenge is 6 more. I've been recording since you stepped off that ramp. I held up my recorder, screen out, the timestamp running. "Your regional contact is going to have a very bad afternoon." "Call it off," Voss said, and for the first time there was nothing smooth in his voice at all. "He's not mine to call. He's protecting his territory, and right now you're standing in the middle of it with a man who just tried to put a round through it." I crouched anyway, slow, and laid my palm flat against the side of Scarn's jaw. "Let him up." Scarn held a breath longer than he needed to, long enough that I understood it as a choice and not an instinct, then stepped back. The downed man scrambled up and into the others, none of them looking anywhere but at the ground. "Get off this range," I said. "All of you. The compact will have your license review filed by tonight, and I'll be the one writing the summary." They left fast and ugly, the transport lifting off balance with men still climbing aboard, and Voss's tablet, I noticed, left behind in the ferns where it had fallen. I picked it up later. The depredation order's metadata put its creation timestamp 4 minutes before his call to me, coordinates copy-pasted from a public survey map of a pasture 2 valleys over. The compact pulled his license inside the week. Sullen, when questioned, admitted he'd never lost a single head of cattle and had been paid for the signature. Scarn didn't care about any of that. By the time the transport's engine noise had faded out of the canyon, he was already back on his haunches beside me, head lowered into the grass, breath fogging the same patch of ground it always did. I sat down next to him the way I had 3 years ago on a fallen log, not because I had anything left to prove, but because it was where I sat now. "Good boy," I told him, which was a stupid thing to say to something that could have taken my arm off as easily as it had taken that other man's. He leaned his head into my shoulder anyway, heavy enough to knock me sideways into the wet grass, and held it there until the fog finally lifted off the ridge. The other rangers have a phrase for it now, the ones who have heard the story enough times to repeat it without rolling their eyes. They say the ridge remembers who climbed it with a gun and who climbed it with nothing in their hands at all. I don't know if a mountain remembers anything, but something on it does, and 3 years ago it decided I was worth keeping.